In this episode, we're going to be doing a reading, summary, and analysis of Edna St. Vincent Millay's wonderful What Lips My Lips Have Kissed and Where and Why. Stick around to hear my all-time favorite line of poetry. First, the reading. What lips my lips have kissed and where and why, I have forgotten, and what arms have lain under my head till morning. But the rain is full of ghosts tonight that tap and sigh upon the glass and listen for reply. And in my heart there stirs a quiet pain for unremembered lads that not again will turn to me at midnight with a cry. Thus in the winter stands the lonely tree, nor knows what birds have vanished one by one, yet knows its boughs more silent than before. I cannot say what loves have come and gone, I only know that summer sang in me a little while, that in me sings no more. So this poem is gorgeous, but it's mostly in modern language, except there's one kind of archaic word, which is boughs. So if you didn't know what that meant, it is the branches of a tree, so add that to your vocabulary. Another important observation is the poem's form, which it's a little hard to tell because it's in two stanzas, but it's a sonnet, specifically a Petrarchian or Italian sonnet. So we've looked at some Shakespearean sonnets, there's a link in the description, and while the Petrarchian sonnets also use 14 lines of iambic pentameter, they have a drastically different rhyme scheme. Instead of ending in a couplet, the poem is divided into an octave and a sestet. And it should be noted that in the sestet, though, Millay flips the 12th and 13th line in the rhyme scheme because, rules are meant to be broken. Speaking of broken rules, the inverted meter at the beginning of line 9 helps us identify thus, because it's stressed and it should be unstressed in a traditional sonnet. It helps us identify that word as the volta, or shift in the poem. So there's the form. Let's talk about some of the imagery that really sets this poem apart. The three images that I think dominate this poem are highlighted here, and I want to give you a second to look at what I've highlighted and pay attention to the different colors and see if you can identify them. But here's what I came up with. First image for me is the disconnected body that's going on here. So we see that the body parts in this poem are kind of spread apart: the lips, the arms, the head, and the heart, and they're not uniform. It's hard to envision this body that's being talked about, or multiple bodies. And I think this makes a lot of sense considering that the speaker's past loves aren't remembered. We just know that they existed, but the details about them, even the names perhaps, are very foggy. So I like that those body parts are separated. In the blue, we have my favorite line of poetry all time, the rain, which Millay tells us is full of ghosts. And I love this line so much, I'd tattoo it across my back if my wife would let me, and if I wasn't afraid of needles on my back. It uses sound imagery to perfectly capture the vague reminiscence of past loves, tapping on the recesses of the speaker's mind. And isn't that what rainy days make us feel? Reminiscent. Sometimes we think of the past with rain. So I just love the sound of the rain tapping on the window, being this ghost that again works very well with the idea of the disconnected body. And then finally, in green, we have the tree, which changes with life's seasons. So the birds, i.e. the loved ones, once sang in the speaker's soul, but now they aren't there any longer. So these images point us toward some major themes that happen in the poem, and the first theme I want to talk about is time and love. The speaker's past loves are unremembered and they are multiple. And I'd like to think that this is less a poem about the one who got away and more about the life that gets away. This poem certainly feels like someone near the end of their life, in the winter of their life, to jump down into the nature imagery for a second, and an individual that maybe isn't missing love, like a love, but love in general, or some have even theorized missing youth and what it means to be youthful and have all these people that you date or think about dating or come across in life, and how that's gone when you're in your later years, maybe just living alone, listening to the rain. And the other imagery that really stands out is the nature imagery. And Millay has cut the volta very clearly in the poem. The meter changes so that thus is emphasized. There's a stanza break, which you don't usually have in a sonnet, and the sestet starts there. So there's a lot of things pointing us toward this thus. And what the shift that happens in this poem is a shift from the speaker kind of laying there thinking about this to envisioning themselves as part of nature. And it takes on this human element. So the speaker is kind of transformed into this tree that, of course, knew what love was. Again, the birds in its branches, but now only knows that the birds were there, but doesn't know where they went. That summer sang in me a little while, that in me sings no more. And it's a lonely tree standing in winter. So it's this wonderful metaphor. And like I said, this is one of my favorite poems. I think it's an amazing piece about what it means to lose not necessarily any one particular person, but lose a part of yourself. Some people describe life as a series of seasons, and I think that's a really important thing to think about here. So this was only a couple of minutes talking about this poem. There's a lot of other stuff you could get into, so let me know if you have any questions or ideas of what you see in this poem. I always like to talk about the lasting influence of the piece, and while I couldn't find a whole lot of pop culture references, I thought it was worth noting that Edna St. Vincent Millay was the first female poet to win the Pulitzer Prize in poetry way back in 1923. So she has continued to have an incredible influence on the literature world, as well as the theater world, which I hope to talk about in some future videos as well. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments or suggest future pieces. And if you liked this video, feel free to subscribe and get access to more like it. Thanks so much, and have a good one. Bye.